Hello everyone. Today's poem is Qin Lin, the first poem in Qin Wind of the Book of Songs. The Qin state is a very key state in the Zhou dynasty, perhaps the most important state in the Zhou dynasty, because after the Zhou dynasty it was the Qin dynasty, which is started from this state. But actually the Qin state or the Qin tribe has a very long history from the very beginning, since the Chinese recorded history, the Yao Shun. So this is a long story, but just keep in mind they have their history from the very beginning of the Chinese history, and they were located at the east part of the China at the very beginning, basically the Shandong province, the Henan province, and they were so called as Dongyi, and they was given a family name as Ying. So in the very ancient time in Chinese history, have a family name, which means you are the noble person. And there was a saying that there are roughly 100 or 100 big families, and they are the tribes, the key tribes, they are the noble families in those days. So 百姓 is not the public people like we are talking it today. In the ancient time, they are all the noble families, noble peoples. But they was so close with the royal family in the Shang dynasty, which was just previous the Zhou dynasty, and thus in the Zhou dynasty they was degraded and they were relocated to the remote frontier areas, and thus one branch of the Ying family, Ying people, they was relocated to the area around Tianshui city today, and there was still their big tombs belonged to those Qin tribes there. And in the Zhou dynasty, because this tribe has their specialties, they are the genius of training the horse to driving the chariots. So if you read several poems in the Book of Songs, you know how important the chariots, the horses, are. Maybe the most important things for the Zhou people, because just like the nuclear weapons in those days, it's just like the carriers on the seas. They are the most critical strategic weapons for a country. So that's because of this specialty, they are so good of driving and training, feed the horses. They was given a piece of land quite near the Zhou people. Just look at the map. Basically, this area is just the very close to the core area of the Zhou people, and later on, one of their ancestors, Qin Zhong, a very important key person for the Qin tribe in this area, he was assigned as a senior officer, and he was given troops to defeat the west, the enemy from the west, which was so called as Xirong. And during the fights in roughly hundreds of years with the enemy from the west, these tribes grows up and they build their power And when the West Zhou dynasty ends, which actually was defeated by the enemy from the West. So you know how strong the people from the West it was. And the Qin tribe has done a great favor to the royal family, to the king. And they even helped the king to relocate it to the new capital, which was so called as Changzhou in that time, and today it was so called as Luoyang, just like in the map. And thus, the head, the big brother, the boss of the Qin tribe, was assigned as the lord, in Chinese, 诸侯. And so it was told since this time, the song from the Qin tribe, from the Qin state, was collected and recorded in the Book of Songs. And the Qin tribe, and then at this time they has taken the coal area of the previous capital areas, and it was believed that there's a lot of the Zhou people still stayed at this area. So finally the Qin state was a mixture of the Qin tribe and the Zhou people together. Thus, the song from the Qin state was so praised in a later time, roughly 200 years later, 100 years later, by the prince from the Wu state. And he said the songs from the Qin state is so great, and that's the sound from the very location, very place of the Zhou people. So that means they inherit a lot, they benefit a lot from the Zhou people, the culture, the economy things, the characteristics, the lands, of course. So with all those things, they, of course, at the same way they work so hard, they was believed the most diligent people in the later years. And thus, after roughly 500 years of endeavor, by generations of endeavor, they take the whole China and they make it as the Qin dynasty. So why the Qin dynasty is so crucial to China even today? First thing first, after roughly 500 years of chaos, many small states competed each other. The Qin state consolidated all the land, united all the states together, and make it one China again. So the unite is always the key value and the most important value for Chinese. So we look on it so much. And the second thing is the Zhou dynasty gave the Chinese the root of the cultures. So the classics read roughly in 2000 years after the Zhou dynasty was all the books written in the Zhou dynasty. The Confucius, the Lao Tzu, they are all the people in the Zhou dynasty. They established, they built the culture, the philosophy of for the Chinese for 2000 years. And after them, until the Qing dynasty, the end of Qing dynasty, the Chinese people, they read the book written in the Zhou dynasty. So we were so influenced. The mindset of Chinese was so influenced by the Zhou dynasty. But on the other part, the landscape and the country structures was by the Qin dynasty. So since the Qin dynasty, the country, the landscapes, sometimes the country will split into several pieces, but everybody will know someday the country will be united again. And if you are a capable person, you have a good will, you will work very hard to unite the country again. So that's the value for the Chinese through the 1,000 years. And the country, the structure is by Qin dynasty in other means, which means it was managed by bureaucracy. So it's not by the lord. So in the Zhou dynasty, there is a king, and he assigned the land, the people, to the lords, the junior lords under him. So it's big lords, small lords, and much more small lords, and then the people. So that's the social structure. And since the Qin dynasty, all the land, all the people belonged, managed by the king. But he was just one person, right? So he built a big bureau government. In that time it's big, but it's much, much, much more smaller than today. Just give you an example. So in a county, we call it 县. So it's just a bunch of people to match the whole county. So let's see, 50 person to manage 20,000 or 200,000 people. And that's not a big deal, because the people in the ancient time, they are with virtue. They have a much, much more moral standard. So there's much, much less disputes or criminals in those days. And most of the disputes could be settled down within the village by the local people themselves. They don't need to go to the government to have a lawsuit against each other. So this model continues roughly for 2,000 years until the end of the Qing dynasty. And today, even there is no king, but the social structure doesn't change too much. But the way of saying it is maybe changed. The land belongs to the people, right? And the governors, they were voted by the people, and they need to work very diligent for the good for all the people. And in those days, they should work. They are responsible only for the king, for the emperor. So that's the only difference since the Qin dynasty. So you know how important the Qin dynasty it was for the Chinese culture, for the Chinese country, for China. So the Qin Wind has a very strong focus on the chariots, on horses, and we can see it in many poems in Qin Wind. And they put a lot of energy to write about horses and chariots. The second thing is they are with great ambition. By how? By two things. They look upon to their ancestors very much. So this gave them a huge benefits when they review the history. They look back hundreds years, thousand years, and they got a lot of things from the history. And on the other side, they look forward quite a lot. So, which means they have a great vision. They have their great plan. No matter it needs 20 years, hundreds years, or maybe even longer, they are very dedicated to their long-term goal, which is to make the Qin tribe, the Qin state, much, much more stronger. And in the later years of the Zhou dynasty, they feel the needs, or it's necessary, or it's unevitable that the whole China should be united. Otherwise, the states will be in fight all the time. There's no time for peace unless you are the most strongest person and you unite all the states into one. And then they manage it. They have done it. So the China became China again, since many small states. Okay, let's get to this poem. It's a quite simple poem. We can see the chariots and the horses start this poem, and then the poem goes to talk about the laws, because the laws in that time is always the most key factors for a powerful state. And the title 车林 means the chariots make it sounds like ling ling. Ling is the sound simulation word to describe the bell on the chariot, the sound of the bell on the chariot. And in the later time, in the Tang Dynasty, there's a very famous poem by Du Fu, 兵车行. He borrowed these words and the sentence in this poem. 车辚辚马萧萧. He write as another character, but actually they are the long words, they are the borrowed words. 车辚辚马萧萧. The chariots make the sound 辚辚辚辚, and the horses make the sound 萧萧. 萧萧 is the sound simulation for the horses. The horses shout. Okay, let's go to the simple poem. 有车辚辚，有马白颠. There are chariots with the sound 辚辚, they are running. And the horses is white head. 颠 refers to the head. And the character 白 equivalents the character laws, so it has a double referring. The horses of the Lord, or the Lord as the horses. 未见君子，四人之令. So I didn't see my laws, and the eunuch was making the order. So it's a little bit strange. The Lord is not there, and the eunuch was on order, was making his order. The eunuch normally just served the food, the clothing, the household for the Lord, and he stays with the Lord. But he was never in the position to make an order. Sometimes he will convey the messages between the visitors and the Lord. So there's a little bit strange. So let's go on what's happening. 板有戚，习有力. On the slope of the hill there are trees of qi, and on the lower wet land there are trees of li. So qi and li are two type of trees, but here it more focused, I think, on the sound. The qi shares the same sound of weep the tears, or tears off. and the li is shaking, and normally it means is so feels so hard and feels so sad, and the body was shaking, and so this is a very negative atmosphere. 既见君子，并作鼓瑟。And finally, I saw the lords, and they are sitting side by side and playing the musical instrument. 瑟 is the musical instrument, and 瑟 normally is a musical instrument to express the negative, sad feelings. So here is all the metaphors or implications, but we still don't know what's happening. Because in the first paragraph, he's coming here to see the Lord, and the Lord is not here. And then it seems like he getting to the big door, and he see, the Lord was playing the music there. Like okay situation, but they all play the musical instrument of 瑟. It's still a little bit negative. Let's see the last sentence in the second paragraph. 今者不悦，逝者其迭. The people today, they are not happy. Yeah, it's negative. They are not happy. And the people has gone was so old. 迭 means very, very old. And the people has gone has a little bit implication. A dead people, a runaway people could be two possibilities. A people has run away, has go away, and a people has passed away. So they could both be so called as 逝者, the people go away. But here, from the first and second paragraph, normally 80% of the people would conclude that it was sort of the funeral things, because it started with a little bit uncertainty, and then the negative, the sad feelings grow. The last character, 迭, implies strongly. Very old, so it implies a funeral strongly. Okay, let's go to the third paragraph and see what's exactly happened. 板有桑，喜有杨. So on the slope of the hill, there are trees of sang. So the sound of sang is same with the death, the funerals, sang. So they share the same sound. So this is still a strong implication. 喜有杨, in the lower wetland, there are trees of yang, and I cannot figure out what the character this tree of yang related, and it may relate it to one of the steps in the funeral, action or a thing in the funeral, but I cannot figure out yet. But I do believe it was implication to the funeral, the death. Okay, let's go to the next sentence. 既见君子，并作鼓簧. Finally, I saw the lords. They are sitting side by side, playing the musical instrument of flute. So, 簧 is a type of flute instrument, and it was a musical instrument by blowing. Okay, the next sentence. 今者不悦，逝者其亡. The people today, they are not happy, and the people gone away, he was dead. So the last sentence concluded very clearly. It's a funeral, and the event was a part of the funeral. The poet, he attended to the funeral, and he wanted to see his dead lord, and he was also eager to see who was the new lord, the son of the dead lord. And so the sentence 并作鼓簧, they are sitting side by side playing the musical instrument, may have two situations. One is the new lord was sitting beside the coffin, his dead father. He was playing the musical instrument. So that's one situation. The other situation is the sons, several sons of the dead father. They were all sitting side by side playing the musical instrument, the music of condolence. So that's the second situation. And because the normal explanation explain this poem as the Lord do well with his people, so they play the music together. But that cannot justify the last sentence. 今者不悦，逝者其亡. The people today, they are happy. They are not happy. And the people has gone. There is someone has gone, and he was dead. 其亡, he was dead. Right? So it cannot justify these things. And also the negative feelings through the whole poem make it very clear. It's not a happy moment. It's not a happy situation. It's something negative and sad. And another character of this poem is this poem started an alternative way. So in the normal way, the typical starting of a state wind is the second paragraph. 板有戚，喜有力. So that's a very typical starting. And the Qin Wind, they are different. They put it into the second paragraph, and they started the chariots, started with the chariots and the horses, which they are so proud of, to start this poem and to start the Qin Wind. This is the first poem in the Qin Wind, right? They make it alternative and special. And finally, the conclusion goes to the condolence to their dead lord. So that's the recall to their past glories, their past sorrows, their past achievement, their past mistakes. So look back to the history. It's always a very, very key value, a value appreciated so much by Chinese. And this poem expressed it very, very clearly, like many other poems in the Book of Songs, but with a little bit different. It focused, it emphasized their own characters, the chariots and the horses. Okay, that's for today. Bye bye.